Sometimes you walk through life alone, wondering if anyone understands what you are going through, hoping someone will listen and offer a word to make your day. The Church of God of Prophecy offers unconditional love and support, regardless of what you are going through. Visit cogop.ca for a location near you. The Church of God of Prophecy, developing authentic disciples of Christ.
What's the greatest name you know? Just shout Jesus!
Yes, the Church of God of Prophecy in Eastern Canada presents the 57th Biennial National Conference under the theme,
The Best Is Yet to Come.
And this year is part live and part virtual. Live worship at the West End Worship Center and stream directly to your computer, your iPad, your cell phone. Just click and join the worship. Special guest speaker, the General Overseer of the Church of God of Prophecy, Bishop Sam Clements. And for the youth, Minister Ryan Graham.
And guest psalmist,
pastor and recording artist, Pastor Richard J. Brown, Kingsway Community Life Center. And of course, all hosted by the National Bishop, Bishop Woodroe Thompson and First Lady Pauline Thompson.
3 explosive days.
July 30th to August 1. Call your local leaders now for more information or go to the website cogop.ca. Admission absolutely free. The best is yet to come.
On the Let's Talk television program, we share solutions to real-life problems with real people, showing how faith guides everyone through the storms of life. We talk about tough issues that affect all generations. Our conversations help you learn, grow, and lead. Help us continue with this great work by partnering with us today. Call 905-625-1278, extension 233, or visit letstalkca.org. We look forward to your partnership with us to change lives. Let's Talk, revealing the heart of Christ through engaging media conversations.
Welcome to another segment of Let's Talk. I'm your host, Woodroe Thompson. Our guest this evening has served in ministry for approximately 37 years. He graduated from Tyndale University College and Seminary with a Master of Divinity degree. He's present and lead pastor of the First Baptist Church in Toronto. He's also a Toronto chaplain, Toronto Police Chaplain, and Centenary Hospital Chaplain. He's one of the board members for the Canadian Black Clergies and Allies. He has been married for over 30 years with 2 postgraduate children. He's an experienced musician, accomplished speaker, and master of ceremonies at multi-faith events, a participant in spectator sports, basketball, tennis, swimming, and guess what? He's also a golfer. We'll talk more about that. My guest is none other than Reverend Wendell Gibbs. Welcome back to Let's Talk, my friend.
Greetings and thank you so much. Good to be with you, my brother.
Good to have you. How's your wife, Roselle, and your adult children, Brandon and Brittany, doing?
They're all doing well. They're grown adults, so we are becoming the children now, the parents, and the kids are telling us what to do. It's been a tough 16 months. Of course, we're home. They're all working from home. My daughter works in a nursing home in Durham. I work here and there in ministry back and forth, but my wife and my son, they work from home. They both had COVID experience about 2 months ago, but coped well, and we were in quarantine and did very well. But now we're double vaccine, so we give God thanks for bringing a solution to the cause of this evil pandemic, and we have done well overall. Ministry has gone well, and family's doing well. Thank you.
Very good. Glad to hear that. Now, you're the pastor of the very first Baptist church, which it has been around since 1826, and it's the oldest Black institution in the city of Toronto. What is it like pastoring a church with that distinction, especially in the 21st century?
Well, it comes with a lot of baggage, because some of the folks are still there from 1826. At least some of the mentality may have been there. But in the last few years, we have recognized much more of coming out, exposed to the outward community and serving as a local church and relevant to society as well, as opposed to holding on to our past baggages. And heritage is important for us. Absolutely. Right. It's what established us to where we are, but also recognizing that the gospel comes first. And I think I remind you the first time I was with you that when I came, I told them Jesus has more history. So let's get over ours. We've only a couple hundred years. We 195 this year. When I came, we were, I think, 183. And I
Right.
told him Jesus has over 2,000 years of history. So let's work on that. So we have evolved to where we are. When we open the Word of God, expose what the Jesus story is and how he was relevant to his culture, how do we become with the same principles relevant to our culture with the same gospel message? And I'll tell you, my brother Bishop Woodroe, downtown Toronto, as you know, it is a challenge because we're exposed to all different kinds of morality and immorality that we have to challenge and balance with.
Right. Now, we were just talking before we came on air that most churches have vacated the inner city. They don't want to be a part of the city. But I want to commend you guys that you're still in the city and still bringing ministry. And just to explain to our viewers, you can explain that when I talk about ministry, I'm not just talking about within the four walls, because you
Right.
guys are doing great work in the community. Tell us some about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we first decided to work on when I was there 12 years ago, and most churches, we do hold on to our doctrines. And we don't
Right.
open the word and see what the Hebrew and the Greek is telling us in relevance to wearing pants, wearing makeup. All these factors are all human based on our doctrines. But when you open the word of God and see how it's relevant to us, it's whomsoever. And it's whomsoever outside the walls, because the church is supposed to be a hospital where people come in to become healed and transformed and delivered. But if we stay internalized for too long, then you end up exploding amongst yourself. And that's what we experience, fighting for entitlement and power and who's the deacon and who's the chair and who's in charge and who's been here long enough. But when you expose yourself to the outside world, people can come in just as they are. Pants long, pants short, but they're coming for the grace of God, which is internal to their soul's experience, much more so than the external. Because raising hands and speaking in tongues doesn't mean that you're that you're a follower or a righteous person in Christ, right?
Right.
God
Right.
only God is the one who knows the intent of the heart. So we've
Right.
exposed the walls, and by exposing the walls, now we remove some of those stigmas of how you dress and how you look in particular. Because downtown Toronto, we're in Chinatown. Actually, we've been there for 195 years, as I mentioned. The first spot we
Right.
were at was Victoria and Queen, which is where St. Michael's Hospital is right now. We were the first building there, and they're planning on putting up a plaque in our honor because we were the first building before they took over in 1841. And then we moved on to university where the Shell company was, and now we're at 101 Huron where we are for the last 65 years. So we're familiar with downtown. We've seen the transitions. I'm only there 11 years, but we've seen the transition of how the homeless and how the drug addicts and how the immorality has invaded downtown Toronto. And there we feel that we should leave. We feel that we should be like Jesus. We should be
Yeah.
among them with light and salt, and to embrace them for who they are, but to be a model so they can be transformed from our life's experience. They can see and model theirs as well.
Well, I love that. That's very good. Now, the world has changed a lot since the last time you were with us, which was
Oh boy.
probably 4 years ago. Um, for example, we've had to deal with COVID-19. We've had to deal with racism. The death of George Floyd impacted not just the U.S., but Canada. How do you see these things impacting the church in the 21st century? Because these things have come home to us. These are social issues that unfortunately sometimes we try not to deal with.
Yeah.
How do you see them impacting our ministry?
Well, certainly has caused a huge impact in then adjusting to how we think and feel towards others, especially ourselves, because we also had to adjust our internal strategies as ministries. We have
Right.
people within the church who's also hurting, fearful, having doubt
Sure.
about their own faith.
Hmm.
So, more than just reaching on the outside, I think in the last little while, in this case, we've had to strengthen the inside as well, strengthen our
Right.
own followers and believers and how we live out our faith in the midst of pandemics. And when I say pandemics, viruses and
Yes.
anti-racism and the hate that's
Mhm.
going across the world right now, downtown Toronto with the agenda, with the agenda of the gender, if you know
Yes.
what I mean, right?
I,
And having
I
to
I
go
get
through all
you.
of that. And so we've had to rethink how we can be just loving as Jesus without too much judgment on the other person, and finding a place of grace that can embrace others to come alongside and learn how to walk in greater faith. Because the storms of this life is a reality, like we spoke about today. right? The
Right.
storms of life is a reality. But for a believer, there is hope in the storm, that Christ is the one who brings that hope of giving us relief from being impacted by the storm. For a non-believer, they stand there in the storm with no hope. But we can
Right.
stand in the storm and have the peace and the calm in our souls and invite others to recognize that storm as well. So the church, we've had to reshape, as you know, online, live stream like ourselves. You had to readjust that for ourselves. No in sanctuary and fellowship anymore. So we've had to learn how to embrace that virtually as well. And then when the anti-Black racism came about as a reality for us with the George Floyd, we too had to find a way to, first of all, not become hateful and judgmental
Right.
for how we have had to face this forever, and find means now to make sure our allies recognize and share in this journey we're on together. So we've had to deal with this because we have Nova Scotian culture, African culture, we have American culture, we have West Indian culture, all mixed in, but we're all Black.
Right.
And we're all
Right.
facing so many other cultures coming alongside of us. So we've had a good journey as a church, but I think as a global community, the church is alive and well, because all of us, Bishop Woodroe, is now exposed to the global world, which truly is how the Church of Jesus Christ functions. Are we making an impact together?
That is true. Now, when George Floyd was killed, there were protests from around the world. I think it's the first time that we've seen anything like that.
Yeah.
How do you think his death impacted the way racism is viewed here in Canada?
Well, George Floyd didn't only impact the Black race, he impacted every race.
Right.
Because now we're recognizing the hatred across Asians, the hatred across First Nations, indigenous peoples, all right? Hatred against religion now, where Muslims are also being targeted. And sadly, you know, we can't assume that we are part of this because that's not Jesus. You know, he came unto his own and his own received him not. He went to the Republicans, he went to the sinners, he went to the adulterers, and all of them he embraced with love. And unfortunately, his very own high priest and the temple rejected and refused to accept the fact that he was embracing this world for whom they are, you know. So George Floyd raised the bar. He raised the bar. First, I put it this way, okay? It seems like we were in a movie all along. But the spotlight is on now. And George Floyd put the spotlights on the subtlety of the darkness of hate and racism. And the reality is it's exposed all of this to us now. We've never seen, every state in America was protesting. The good news is, Bishop, in this generation, with your children, my children, who are much more exposed to a multicultural world, we saw the protesting on like the civil rights movements in the 60s. We saw much more a diverse, multicultural race marching for justice, marching for what is right in society. It's our leaders, our presidents, our prime ministers, and those in higher powers. They got to pay attention because systemic racism is still a reality. And the deflection we're seeing today compared to George Floyd a year ago, the deflection now is everybody else is jumping on the bandwagon. Isn't that true? Right? So the Asians are on the bandwagon now. The Muslims are on the bandwagon now. No, I wouldn't say First Nations, because we gotta side with them even more, because if we think Blacks have had a rough time for 400 years of slavery and ongoing racism, what about our indigenous people and our First Nations? And we've had an evangelist in our church last month speak on a Sunday morning about the issue, and we are working towards finding a way how us as a local ministry can become participants in the solution for our indigenous people. Not just to say we are sorry, but how can we find a way to integrate and become part of the programs with them, so we can help elevate them for the same struggle for us as Blacks, how we can elevate so we can bring change against the systemic racism in our society, economically, socially speaking, in every aspect of our society. How can we break down those dividing walls? And I pray that George Floyd is just the beginning of his causing us to raise awareness to what's going on right now.
Very good. I like the fact that you talk about the First Nation people and what they're going through, and I agree with you. Well, we're having a fascinating conversation with my friend, Reverend Wendell Gibbs. We're going to take a quick break. At this time, we'd like to bring to you the Urban Report by Sharma McDonald. Please don't go. We're going to continue our conversation. Let's look at the Urban Report at this time.
Hey y'all, and welcome to another segment of the Urban Report. I'm your host, Charlotte McDonald. I am always thrilled to introduce or reintroduce Canadian Christian artists doing amazing things in the community. We have so much talent in Canada, and we need to do all that we can to celebrate and uplift these artists. So definitely look out for more Canadian artists to come. That being said, I present to you today an artist that goes by the stage name Drew Bex. His real name is Dennis Dunkley, and he is a Canadian hip-hop artist and record producer born and raised in Toronto. I just find that it is so amazing that even though he didn't have any formal training, he always had that musical ear, as they say. Maybe because growing up he was exposed to his mother always singing around the house. But sadly, at the age of 7, that beautiful singing would come to an end when his mother got killed in a car accident. Drew eventually settled in with his grandparents in Mississauga. He mentions in interviews that his mother instilled certain lessons in him, but that it was his grandmother who solidified the foundation and set him on that path of fully realizing the importance of attending church and listening to the word of the Lord. Even if he didn't want to go to church, she made sure that he went. However, for many of us Christians, we remember that one incident that had to occur to have us make that decision to follow Christ. You know what I'm talking about. When you feel you've hit rock bottom and there's nothing left to do but turn to God. That instance for Drew came when he was betrayed by a group he thought were his friends, which made him realize that he didn't want to lead a negative lifestyle. He finally made that decision to follow Christ at the age of 17. A reminder that God is truly the only one that we can rely on. Drew's story resonates with me as I am so grateful to have had both of my grandmothers teach me from a young age to seek God first. So shout out to all you grandparents. You are all so amazing, and we are just so grateful to have you. Drew Bex is a family man who eventually had the chance to partner his love for rapping with Jesus. For those of you who are familiar with Drew, you've heard his song entitled Running Man. Now, this song actually makes a turning point in his career as it gained much attention, and his album actually reached number 33 on the iTunes hip hop charts. That song is pretty dope because the video that I want to share with you today is one of my favorites called Winter in July. The title alone is pretty intriguing, right? So check it out. Thanks again for joining the Urban Report today, and remember to love, live, and give. See y'all next time.
I got your rules, but they'll never be mine. Not gonna let them slow me down. I'm about to lap you 3 times. I got a ribbon in the sky, spreading my wings about to fly. I'm breaking rules, not doing right, like having winter in July.
Wendell Gibbs. And Wendell, just before we went to the break, the Urban Report, we talked about Muslim. And on June 6th of this year, Canadians were horrified to learn that a Muslim family of 4 died after they were run over by a pickup truck.
My Lord.
The lone survivor was a 9-year-old Faiz. You attended a vigil for this family.
Yes.
Now, they're Muslims, you're a Christian. Why did you think it was necessary or important to attend that vigil?
Because before we are religious, we are humans.
Very good.
And if the whole world can recognize that we are God's creation,
Right.
God made us all in his image. Man has taken, religion and turned it into a multifaceted religion where there's 32,000 religions. Did you realize that, Bishop Woodroe? Right?
32,000?
There is 32,000 religions, my friend.
Well,
Can
I
you believe
learned
that?
something today. I didn't know that.
You know, but that includes everybody: Hindus, Muslims,
Yes,
Buddhists, and then
yes, I understand. Right,
from the Christian faith, evangelicals and Orthodox and all, even from the original Judaism in the first
right.
in 80, when Christ came on the scene, there is now thousands that has split off from the Anabaptists and the Methodists and the
Right.
Mennonites and the Presbyterians
Sure.
and the Church of God of Prophecy and the Baptists and so on, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, but you put all that aside and you go back far enough beyond all these different religions, and you will see it's just about humanity, and it matters. It matters because I am not here to necessarily kill my fellow human because it's a difference of opinion or a different belief.
Correct.
But we have
Correct.
created such hate in the world, and our nations
Yes.
and our leaders have caused such hate that it filters down to our regular society of peoples and the grassroots people, and we don't recognize we're only following a man's doctrine. Because I believe
Right.
Jesus did not come to kill. He came to restore. When you take the word race that has caused so much divide, the Tower of Babel in
Right.
Genesis chapter 11, the evolution of the people of Israel, believing that they are the best, when really and truly, since Jesus
Mhm.
came, he showed we were all equal in the Matthew story of neither Jew nor Greek nor Gentile. But in all of that, when you take the word race, if you don't put the word G for God in front of race, you will always have a problem, because the
Oh,
world needs grace. It
yes.
needs the God, the supreme being of creation. So I felt it was important that regardless to what life is being lost, it doesn't have to be a black person from slavery and
Right.
lynching and murder. It doesn't have to be an Asian person who's been punched or kicked on the
Mhm.
street. It doesn't have to be buried children from our indigenous people from many, many years ago. We need to have a heart of Jesus who cares for people no matter what, right? It matter, even for people who are gay and homosexual.
Right.
First it was LGBTQ. Now it's
Mhm.
LGBTQT plus S222 and plus plus and so on. Yet they are people of God that God will be the one to judge eventually. So when this family got killed, I contacted the imam of the Muslim faith across Canada, and I sent an email to all the imams of Canada, and expressed on behalf of the Christians our sorrow and our empathy towards the loss, and we share in your burden and your sorrow. So when I heard there were so many different vigils happening, I thought it was
Mhm.
important to participate, to show that we are in solidarity against the anger, the hate, the pain, the sorrow. I wasn't there to preach Jesus. They know what I stand for, right? But they saw the grace of God, not the
Right.
race, but the
Right.
grace of God by walking alongside, and what an opportunity it was for us, and it has to continue as well. And
Right.
every
Right.
minister and leader and religion and church following needs to understand the dynamics of how Jesus functioned, that influenced the world and transformed the world much more than just trying to make them Baptist or Church of God or whatever the case may
Right.
be.
Right.
Let's just
Right.
make them understand that Jesus died and rose and came again for them. But let us do that by the way we live and share
Right.
love.
Well, it's called loving neighbor, and one of the way you love God is by loving your neighbor.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
are also a Toronto police chaplain. Recently, you also attended the funeral of the slain police officer, Constable Jeffrey Northup. He
Yeah.
was killed in the line of duty. How does police officers view your role and your respond to you as a chaplain?
Yeah, well, I am one of 16 chaplains, volunteer chaplains across the Toronto Police Services.
Right.
I serve two particular stations, 52 Division downtown, because our church is downtown close to them, and the
Right.
one close to the beach is 55.
Right.
I am seen as a command, because of the level of respect they gave to us as clergy, but I am
Right.
there to represent us as faith people, not so much
Right.
as a Christian, but as a faith person, because a
Right.
Muslim may want my support. A
Of
Hindu
course.
officer may want my support,
Of
but
course.
many of them, of course, are also having Christian faith. And what I offer to them is just my presence and my spiritual support and counsel. And I'll tell you,
Right.
Bishop, without exposing too much, I was there almost every day that week last week when Officer Jeff was murdered, and I was there with the platoons inside the station, as I have access to those things as a police chaplain. And
Right.
I'm telling you, we cried.
I can imagine. Yes.
Big, strong police officers carrying guns and uniforms cried. That was the third officer at that particular division who was murdered. And as you may have known, 10 years ago, one was run over by a snowplow.
Yes, I
That
remember
was
that. Yes.
that was
Yeah.
Russell.
Yeah.
But they recognize us, Bishop, you and
Right.
me, in our calling of spiritual care, spiritual love towards them. Walking through the station, embracing others, one-on-one conversation, sometimes of counseling. I'm doing a wedding next month for one of the officers. I did a couple of funerals in the past, and I did the
Right.
one on Monday night. Monday afternoon. I was there for Jeff. I was the one who led the casket with the officiant, Bill, who was an Anglican priest. I was one of the
Right.
officiants, and I also got a chance to share and offer a prayer. And I also led the casket out of BMO as well. What an opportunity! Not so much for being
Oh,
anything less than just having a presence that
right.
God is with you. He is your
Yes.
comfort. He can be your
Yes.
comfort
Yes.
in the midst of your anger and your pain and your suffering that you're going through. Because here's the thing: the officers in their uniforms, we are quick to judge them based on what media is telling us. We
Right.
forget that these are human beings with families that
Hmm.
they have to go home to safely. And I'm telling you, every wife, every spouse, every partner, every children of every officer in every station is concerned and fearful for their own.
Of
I
course.
should say
Yeah.
husbands as well, because there are many
Hmm.
female officers. So
Right.
even their
Right.
husbands, all
Right.
families for that whole last week,
Right.
my friend, all families were concerned for the safety of their own spouse, father, uncle, whatever the case may be, going out in the community, just as the Muslims was just exposed to the uniform, the way they were dressed, and ran over
Right.
an officer in his uniform. And when I'm in my uniform, I'm also
Right.
judged based on what I'm wearing on the outside. But
Of
if I
course.
can, if I can encourage your listeners, folks, behind the uniform is a person with
Yes.
family, same concerns and fears as we have as well. And I
Right.
recognize that there is obviously, some officers who are, on the fringe of perhaps questionable in their service, and we can talk about it if
Right.
you want, because I got a
Sure.
perspective for you
Sure.
as well.
Sure.
We are much more better here in Canada than we are in America in terms of
Right.
law enforcement and how they treat our community. But there is a percentage of them who definitely needs to be challenged. And as you heard, just the report has been happening right now. The chiefs of all the different divisions across Canada is now challenging our leaders in our federal government to give them the right to fire and to remove officers who are questionable
Oh, I
without
agree
pay.
with that.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, without
Yes.
pay. And thank
Sure.
God for the chiefs and our own chief Rama, who's hearing and listening and championing the cause to bring about the change we're hoping for our community against law enforcement.
Well, I'm glad you covered that because one of the things I was going to ask you, as someone who worked closely with the Toronto Police Services, sometimes when we hear these things from the media about defunding the police and all police officers are bad and racist, sometimes it's really disheartening
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're correct. We have good police officers. I know police officers who are Christians and who have dedicated their lives to serve and to protect.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so sometimes it's disheartening to hear. And when they talk about defunding the police, almost like they want to get rid of the police services, which is ridiculous.
And the first person we call when we're in trouble, Bishop Woodrow, they don't call you. They don't call me, Bishop Woodrow. We get called after the fact, right? We call 911, which is police,
Right,
paramedics, and the EMS and fire.
right,
We
right,
need to respect and care for them with love and appreciation because they are going to the front lines. They're running to the fire. They're running to the violence. They're running to the
right,
shootings when we're running away. But let
correct.
me just encourage everyone with that because look, there are bad officers. Okay,
Yes,
uh,
we know that.
there are bad pastors.
Yes, of course.
There are bad,
That's true.
there are bad doctors.
Of course.
There are bad deacons.
Yes.
In fact, so society, there's 5,000 officers in Toronto. 5,000.
Right.
Okay, now in society, I tell people in society in general, in our life that we live in here, we generally, I would say, about 10% of society is on the fringe of being questionable with their behavior, the bad behave. Maybe they're in doing wrong stuff and should be incarcerated or be challenged. So there's about 10% of society who's probably some kind of a criminal activity or whatever. Well, of that 10% of society, guess where they are? They're in every organization. They're in churches, right? And they're on the Toronto Police Service forces as well. So we are judging the police services who is coming from society. And really,
well, Wendell, I hate to cut you, but our time is gone. We have to invite you back, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us. Blessings to you, and keep up the good work you're doing. It's good to hear the many things you're doing with the church. God bless you.
Well, it's my humble experience to be with you again. Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, folks, that's all the time that we have for today. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I hope you were blessed by what Reverend Wendell Gibbs had to share with us. And I'd like to let you know that we hope to hear from you. Please go to YouTube, our YouTube page, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Please send us a text. Please, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, please send us a text. Let us know you've enjoyed the show. We also would like to receive your financial support. You can send us something by e-transfer at donate@cogop.ca, or you can do that through our website, or even here at our studio, 5145 Tompkins Road. Again, want to thank you for joining us. God bless you. Let's keep talking. We'll see you next time.
On the Let's Talk television program, we share solutions to real-life problems with real people, showing how faith guides everyone through the storms of life. We talk about tough issues that affect all generations. Our conversations help you learn, grow, and lead. Help us continue with this great work by partnering with us today. Call 905-625-1278, extension 233, or visit letstalkca.org. We look forward to your partnership with us to change lives. Let's Talk, revealing the heart of Christ through engaging media conversations.
What's the greatest name you know? Just shout Jesus!
Yes, the Church of God of Prophecy in Eastern Canada presents the 57th Biennial National Conference under the theme
The best is yet to come.
And this year is part live and part virtual. Live worship at the West End Worship Center and stream directly to your computer, your iPad, your cell phone. Just click and join the worship. Special guest speaker, the General Overseer of the Church of God of Prophecy, Bishop Sam Clements. And for the youth, Minister Ryan Graham.
And guest psalmist,
pastor and recording artist, Pastor Richard J. Brown, Kingsway Community Life Center. And of course, all hosted by the National Bishop, Bishop Woodroe Thompson, and First Lady Pauline Thompson.
3 explosive days.
July 30th to August 1. Call your local leaders now for more information or go to the website cogop.ca. Admission absolutely free. The best is yet to come.